Welcome, everybody, to a special post-game edition of All In with Art Stapleton, a New York Giants podcast brought to you by NorthJersey.com and The Record. I'm your host, Art Stapleton, and we are coming to you from the MetLife Stadium coach's booth here in East Rutherford, New Jersey, recording this live after the Giants' 31-12 preseason victory over the New York Jets. No, there's not a trophy with Snoopy's face on it, but perhaps it will be a silhouette of Jaxson Dart, because for the second time in as many weeks, the story of the game for the New York Giants is the quarterback. And I will use this, as you guys know, I am a big Star Wars fan, and I will go to Rogue One because Jaxson Dart and Abdul Carter are both big fans of Star Wars and Darth Vader. Jaxson Dart is more Anakin than Darth Vader. But the line from Jyn Erso in Rogue One is, rebellions are born from hope. And what Jaxson Dart gives the Giants is hope. When you have a young quarterback, now 22 years old, he's your first-round pick, you traded up to get him, and you're not forcing him into the lineup, and every test you're giving him, he's passing, it's a good feeling as a franchise because you feel like you're not just relying on what might be. You're actually seeing really the fruits of your labor, of his labor, out there on the field. So have to talk about Jaxson Dart again. I'll give you my take on it. Talk to Jaxson, talk to some players in the locker room about Jaxson. Also talk to Jalen Hyatt about his situation. So I'll get to that. But like I said, Giants 2-0 in the preseason. This team needs positivity. They need confidence. And it's the biggest thing you can get from a quarterback room that believes. And what I like about what the Giants have done in this locker room is they've given this team quarterbacks to believe in, quarterbacks who lead, quarterbacks who can stand up in front and have confidence in their own game to be able to spread that confidence and that optimism throughout the entire roster. And again, this isn't about pointing fingers. I've said it several times. It's not about pointing fingers at Daniel Jones or any of the quarterbacks that came after Eli Manning. But the reality is that with Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston and Jaxson Dart and then Tommy DeVito, who has done what he can do behind the scenes to befriend Jaxson Dart, to give him a sounding board, to give him somebody who can be comfortable in this offense, to answer his questions when Brian Dable and Shea Tierney and Mike Kafka are not there to answer his questions. And just the confidence that Russell Wilson puts out there. And that's why I wrote a couple weeks ago and asked Russ that question, the idea of, has there ever been a time when he didn't believe in his own confidence? And I think that's a special skill to have. That's a part of a skill set to have. And Jaxson Dart has it. He has that confidence, but it's different than Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson can stand up and talk about the way he approaches the game. And I'll tell you, starting on Saturday, I wanted to get here early, 4 hours before game time, because last week we were there. We liked the arrival videos. We want to put the arrival videos up on TikTok and Instagram and Twitter, save the best ones for Twitter, and give people a feel of what it's like behind the scenes, because we don't have pregame access in the NFL. So it's not like you're at Yankee Stadium and you can talk to Aaron Judge before the game, or you can talk to Cody Bellinger before the game. Here, you get a high and a buy. If you watch some of my videos on TikTok today, some high and buys with some players. Kayvon Thibodeau, if you haven't seen that video, basically caught me as I was putting up another video online, and I laughed and I said, you caught me, Kayvon. He goes, I'll do it again. So he kind of went backwards and then did it again and gave a little hello and that kind of thing. It's these interactions before the game that are priceless for us in our reporting. And I think building relationships that way, it's not about saying hi and bye, but it's about FaceTime and recognition and also getting a feel for who these guys are. And if you pick up something pregame, it's all the more better for the coverage that we can provide to you both on All In and on NorthJersey.com. So, pregame, when I arrived at the Giants locker room, and shout out to George, security guard extraordinaire. He's the home security guard here at MetLife Stadium. So he's outside the locker room of the Giants when they're the home team and the Jets when they are the home team. But when I got there, there was one player here already, and that was Russell Wilson. So he had to be here by 3:30. The other three quarterbacks came in together, Tommy DeVito, Jaxson Dart, and Jameis Winston, put that video up. But it's a funny thing about the rookies coming here. This was their first time in this building for a football game. And, Jaxson Dart said, he had been here for a Zach Bryan concert, but it was not in the Giants locker room. So Marcus Bowe, a funny moment with that is that when he came in, I was the only one he recognized at the front near in the hallway where the Giants murals, they now have new murals painted in the hallway. So the Giants of the 2011 season of Super Bowl 46, when the curtains were up, that the Jets put the curtains up from Rex Ryan's orders, essentially, to block the Giants Super Bowl murals. And we all remember David Deal and Zach Diassi kind of pulling the curtains back. Those are all painted over now. They're all new. It's all new murals, an entirely new paint job in that hallway. And maybe it freshens things up a little bit. Constantly looking at the past, the Giants are always a franchise proud of its past, proud of its history. Maybe you can look ahead at this point, and that's kind of what Jaxson Dart and Abdul Carter and many others represent. It's hard to believe that Brian Burns is only 27 years old. Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence in the same draft class. Burns went 16th, Lawrence went 17th. Now they're lining up next to each other. But anyway, the idea of Russell Wilson, it's Russell Wilson is watch me. Jameis Winston is tell me. And I think that leadership style between the two of them, they don't really overlap. And I think it says a lot. It says a lot for ending up with those two quarterbacks, and it says a lot for the personality. I've told you that line that was given to me that I've used in several columns, the idea of from milk toast to Fireball whiskey. And that's kind of the combustible nature of the Giants quarterback room if it doesn't go well. But if it does go well, you have a room that respects each other, and you have guys who are kind of pulling from each other in order to be able to improve. So back to Jaxson Dart. Tonight, he was 14 of 16 for 137 yards. He had the touchdown pass to Greg Dulcich. We'll get to that in a second. He had a touchdown run where he called his own number. And overall, in two games, these numbers are staggering. They really are. For somebody who has watched quarterback play here and probably hasn't seen, for me, I have not seen quarterback play from a passing perspective as good as this since 2011 and Eli Manning. And again, I mean that across the board. Giants have gotten great quarterback play this preseason. Does that translate to the regular season? No. You have no idea how that's going to translate. But I think it helps build a room. And I laughed last year. I heard from people talking about the rankings of quarterback rooms, and the Giants have the worst quarterback room in the league. It was never about the rankings. When I took umbrage with that, it was the idea of what's the difference if you're ranked 32nd or 30th. But the overall point of how the Giants quarterback room, they just weren't a room that could lead the entire team. They all had their issues. And again, it's not about pointing fingers. It's just about reality. Daniel Jones was essentially in his own head from the offseason when he's recovering from the ACL, and the Giants are trying to move up and trying to get a new quarterback and bringing him back, but then also the injury guarantee and knowing that we didn't know if Daniel Jones was how far was he going to go with this offense, and did they really believe in him? And I think the team kind of took on that personality, the idea of the doubt creeping in and not really being ready to kind of step up and be like Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson, there are many people who thought he was washed, present company included, until I started watching and looking at things in Pittsburgh and started looking at things. Yeah, he wasn't good enough to get Pittsburgh to the Super Bowl last year. He wasn't good enough to win a playoff game as a quarterback. But 16 touchdown passes and 5 interceptions in 11 games. The Giants haven't gotten that in a very long time from their passer. And I think that is a big, big thing going forward. And you saw it on the first drive tonight. They get good protection from the offensive line. Russell Wilson hits Bo Collins for an 80-yard pass. Then Devin Singletary ends up cashing in from 1 yard out for a touchdown. I'm sure Bo Collins wishes he got in the end zone. But when you focus on what Jaxson Dart can do, you kind of lose face on the first-team offense. So I'll start there. I think the Giants have run the ball pretty well so far this summer. I think Tyrone Tracy has looked good. I think the offensive line, you have to be optimistic with what they've seen. Yeah, of course. You're looking at a Jets front that didn't have Quinnen Williams, that didn't have Jermaine Johnson. So, it's a little different, but Jets have some players. They were playing their starters out there this week. The Bills were playing their starters last week defensively. So, I think moving forward, what you've seen in the offensive line, what you've seen in the run game, I like this team's chances of being able to schematically attack an opponent with what they can do in different aspects. Now, look, you need Malik Neighbors back. People keep asking about Malik Neighbors. I made this point the other day. On Wednesday, Malik Neighbors was in uniform and came out like midway through practice. So that tells me that he's doing football training inside. If he's in shorts and a shirt, then I'm looking at it going, you know what? He's far a ways off. Now, people keep asking, is it the toe? Is it the shoulder? From what I understand, that it's not that. And if he's a little banged up, he does have something, but the Giants are now just going to be smart. And if Malik Neighbors was grinding it right now, the calls would be to put him in bubble wrap and get him ready for September 7th. I think the Giants are just getting him ready for September 7th. Going back and forth in our little chat here with producer Paul Wood, the moxie, and 100%, the moxie of some of these players, the moxie of Jaxson Dart is extremely high. So, all right, let's talk some things about Jaxson Dart. Number one, I told you this back on draft night when we did our post-draft shows, that Brian Daboll was going to find opportunities to challenge Jaxson Dart, and it wasn't just going to be lip service. We saw it early in training camp. We saw it back in the OTAs. There was a series, remember, early in training camp when Jameis Winston drove the offense down the field, and they pulled Jameis Winston and put Jaxson Dart in the game. And Jaxson Dart ended up throwing a touchdown to Cam Scatterbo. And it was almost like, when Jameis made the joke about he's used to that when he was in New Orleans, Taysom Hill used to replace him. But there was a method to the madness for Brian Daboll. And Brian Daboll said then, nobody knew it was going to happen. I didn't tell the coaches. I didn't tell the players. And I certainly did not tell Jaxson Dart. So fast forward to tonight. It's the second quarter. Giants, first play, Russell Wilson hands off to Tyrone Tracy. He runs, I think it was for 12 yards. Daboll looks at Dart and says, Jaxson, you're in. Sends Jaxson in to take Russell Wilson out. Couple things. One, Brian Daboll said after the game, nobody knew except for him that he was doing it in that moment. Obviously, the coaches know that that's what Daboll wanted to do. He wanted to test the young quarterback along the way when they put together their plan. But now Jackson's going in. Why? Because the Giants have to see if they can trust Jaxson Dart to be QB2. Before he becomes QB1, he has to be QB2. And being QB2 and the backup on game day is a lot different than just saying, you know what, you're the next in line to start. you have to be ready in a moment's notice to be able to get in the game. A guy goes to the sideline, takes a bad hit, goes for a concussion test, has to come out of play. Whatever it is, if you're the second quarterback up, you've got to be ready to get in that game unprepared, or at least, I shouldn't say that, very prepared, but without notice and unexpectedly go into the game. So Jaxson Dart comes onto the field. His reaction to Brian Daboll was, "You serious?" Daboll say, "Yeah, I'm serious. Go in. You're in." So Jaxson comes darting onto the field. And I asked Theo Johnson this after. I said, "What was the reaction in the huddle?" And he said, "We were shocked. Here's Jaxson coming in. We didn't see this coming. It's a curveball. We thought Russ was playing, and here comes Jaxson." They call the play. They call a tight end screen. Jaxson takes an interesting arm angle. That's another part of his game that I didn't anticipate being as good or as seasoned as it is. Jaxson Dart, great arm angle, gets the ball around the defense to Theo Johnson, 30-yard catch and run. Great play. Theo Johnson, again, being that guy who looks like he can be. If Malik Neighbors is on the field, Theo Johnson has a chance to be the number 2 weapon in this offense, not counting Tyrone Tracy as the lead back. And then ultimately when Cam Scatterbo gets on the field and what they like to do with Devin Singletary. And props to our guy, Turbo Miller, too. We'll see if we can get to him in a little while. But that play, and then all of a sudden Dart is out and Russell Wilson's back in the game. And, when I talked to Theo Johnson about it, he said, just the presence that Jaxson had. Daboll said, you have to be prepared. Jaxson Dart, you're going to catch, I guarantee you, there are some players, some quarterbacks who would have been in that situation and would have been like, well, what? I mean, that was the first snap he got in a home preseason game. First time he stepped onto the field to play in a game, and it was by surprise. And he was blindsided. And Dart did a good job, completed the play, and then ultimately comes back onto the field. So, like I said, 26 of 35 for 291 over the span of 2 games. He has 2 touchdown passes, the 29-yarder last week to Little Jordan Humphrey, and then the 20-yarder to Greg Dulcich today. Something learned afterwards from Jaxson Dart that was similar to the play. I don't know if you guys remember in Buffalo on TV, the ball it looked like it was overthrown Dulcich, but I kept telling you that from our vantage point in Buffalo, it was a good ball and Dulcich ducked. It was the similar play that they ran tonight and they hit it for a touchdown. And Jaxson Dart brought that up after the game and said, Greg and I talked about it. We talked about what we would do differently, and we're pleased that we hit it. So I thought that was kind of a cool thing. So Jaxson completes his last 13 passes. He also has 5 rushes for 29 yards. He had the touchdown run tonight. Here's the thing. The question was basically asked for Brian Daboll, maybe not pointed, but, dancing around it a little bit. What does he have to do to challenge Russ for QB1? And Daboll, basically said Russ is a starting quarterback and we're happy with Jaxson. Jackson's just got to keep getting better. Now, there are layers to this for Jaxson Dart and his development. And, the first layer is the locker room. There are a lot of veterans here who have bought into Russell Wilson and his pedigree and what he said and how hard he's worked. You better be sure when you go to the rookie that you're going to keep the locker room. This is a dance that Brian Daboll has to have. And, it's kind of unfair to Russell Wilson because he's where he is right now, and Jaxson Dart is where he is. And everybody loves the backup quarterback. Everybody loves the young quarterback, and for good reason. But the Giants are still going to go with Russell Wilson. And Jaxson Dart will be there, will be ready when they pull the trigger and when they put him in. And it's an Eli Kurt Warner situation from 2004. Now, I have to imagine that Russell Wilson's feeling a little bit of pressure right now because he knows the calls are going to come. He knows the idea of as soon as he makes a mistake in week one, it's going to be, well, put the kid in. But that's the world we live in, and not for anything. Russell Wilson was the kid. Back in 2010, Russell Wilson was the kid. He was the third-round pick, and Matt Flynn was the free agent quarterback signed by the Seahawks from the Green Bay Packers for $10 million. And the third-round pick beat him out, and they went with the third-round pick. And that, at the time, was Russell Wilson. So now you're talking even a higher pedigree with Jaxson Dart. But, look, if Brian Daboll goes to Jaxson Dart too soon and he struggles, the reality is that he loses his ace in the hole. Now, everybody's going to tell you that Daboll's on the hot seat and Joe Shane's on the hot seat. I'm not there. I'm not telling you that is or isn't. You have to see how the season plays out. But if they go to Jaxson Dart early and Jaxson Dart is up and down for the season and ownership isn't convinced that Brian Daboll has done a great job with Jaxson Dart and getting him ready, at the end of the day, you can't sell ownership. Look, we're developing this guy. You need to figure out the right place and time to be able to put Jaxson Dart on the field. And when you do it, you've essentially said, it's Jackson's show, and we're going to roll. And I don't know if the Giants are there yet. I think they like where he is developmental-wise. As I wrote in my column yesterday, they like where he is here mentally, what he's picking up, the touchdown pass last week to Lil Jordan Humphrey, the alert at the line of scrimmage, realizing the safety, Damar Hamlin, was too far over. He could never get to that point to be able to play over the top. So he took the go route and threw the touchdown to Humphrey. In practice, joint practice against the Jets, the idea of having one read, one throw on the left sideline, the right sideline. He sees the left sideline's covered, scrambles, gestures to Bo Collins, and throws a touchdown to Bo Collins. Little things. The little things are adding up to big things for Jaxson Dart. And it's been fun to watch. For somebody my age, I'm sure Paul Wood remembers as well, the video game NBA Jam. I used to love playing it in college. We'd go down they had a little arcade room up at UMass in the campus center, and we'd play NBA Jam. And you hit a couple shots in a row, and he's heating up. And then you hit, I think it was 3 shots in a row, and he's on fire, and the ball's turning, and the ball is a fireball. That was Jaxson Dart. Now, I talked to Turbo Miller about Jaxson Dart after the game too, and he said that that's my dude. I love playing with him. He's a lot of fun to play with. He said that guy walks it, that guy talks it, and that guy does it. He said, and there's a big difference between walking and talking and doing. And I thought that was a great quote, and I'll have that in some of my copy. I'm not sure where I'm going to put it from Turbo, but the guys in the locker room see Dart, and he said, it's one thing to look the part, but it's another thing to play the part. And he looks the part and he plays the part. And I think that's a big, big step forward for Jaxson Dart. So like I said, rebellions are built on hope. They're all about hope. And right now the hope is the franchise quarterback who's 22 years old and getting better and better and better. So we'll see where this team goes. All right, a couple things. I can go on and on and on about Jaxson Dart. That's 24 minutes on Jaxson Dart and little nuggets here and there. But we will continue to focus in on Jaxson Dart as we move forward here. An interesting part of it is that the closer we get to the regular season, the less we're going to see Jaxson Dart in practice, judging where he is. And then it becomes kind of a behind-the-scenes thing of how much progress do the Giants see and when will they pull the trigger? How is Russell Wilson playing? How are they doing? What are they doing on the scoreboard? What are they doing in the standings? All this stuff is to come. So A week from Tuesday is final cuts down to 53. Turbo Miller is somebody I mentioned, playing a lot of special teams, down a punt inside the 10 today, which was great. Talked to him about that. He's fired up. He believes that he's earned a spot in this league, and he's shown people what he can do, not only as a running back, but as somebody who was willing to contribute on special teams. I don't think there's any way the Giants can expose Turbo Miller to waivers now. I think what he's done in the preseason, I think he's earned a spot. So I'm keeping 4 running backs. If that means I have to keep 3 running backs and have Cam Scatterbo start the season on IR, I don't know where he is physically with that hamstring. I got to imagine that Cam will be back on the field sooner rather than later. Saw him come here tonight. Didn't see him afterwards, so I couldn't talk to him. But, that's going to be something interesting to watch. But I think Turbo Miller has locked down a spot in this roster. And you got to like his game. I like it. He's got that burst that nobody else on this team has. Tyrone Tracy has quicks, don't get me wrong, and he's looked pretty good. But the reality is that Turbo Miller has that turbo. There's a reason for turbo, and he has that turbo and that burst, and I think that says a lot for where he's at. So we go from that to yes, another Paul. Paul keeps hitting me with, yes, the Rebels from Ole Miss. So the idea of the Rebels and the rebellion built on hope. Jaxson Dart is a rebel. And the last time the Giants had hope, they had a rebel as well. A little different. Eli Manning's a little different than Jaxson Dart. But as far as hope, it's the same nonetheless. All right, let me look at my notes. I thought it was a good night for Cordell Flott. Made a great play in coverage, getting the pass breakup, got around Garrett Wilson's hips and made the play in the red zone. Could have easily just tried to go through Garrett Wilson and would have committed a penalty. Did not. I thought that was really good. So he had a good night. I thought Marcus Bowe, again, with the second team at left tackle and third team, he was pushing guys all over the place. Marcus Bowe is going to have a spot on this team and have an impact at some point, sooner rather than later. It's just a matter of bringing him along the right way, and I think the Giants will do that. I don't believe they will force him into the lineup. I do think that they will give him an opportunity in the lineup if guys struggle. So we'll see where that is. Obviously, Andrew Thomas coming off of PUP and having an opportunity to be the starting left tackle in week 1 is imperative for this team. You need Andrew Thomas. Don't forget how good Andrew Thomas is. And that's, I think that's an important part of this. But Marcus Bowe, again, hat tip to him. Another good performance in the preseason game. Let's talk Evan Neal. Evan Neal, still, I think there's the concern that he can get beat with quickness, that he's not quick enough out of his stance, even on the inside. Gave up a hit today on Jaxson Dart on a second down play. And no, I know everybody was arguing on Twitter in my timeline. No, it wasn't Evan Neal who gave up the sack. No, I didn't say he gave up the sack. He gave up the hit on the previous play. The sack came when Dart scrambled out, and that's another play that Dart said that he's going to be carrying with him. He thought if he didn't get clipped by his ankle, he would have run for a touchdown. And the field was wide open, so it'll be interesting to look it back on film and see if that would have happened. But Dart definitely believes that he would have scored a touchdown on that play. But, again, I'm not ready to jump off the Neal bandwagon at this point. I know there's a lot of people pushing him. Obviously, the Giants want him to salvage something out of being the number 7 overall pick. But I'm not forcing him into the lineup right away. I don't see him being able to beat out Greg Van Roten from the jump. We'll see what happens. But I think at that point, if Neal can be a valuable reserve, I think that's a different story. So let him keep working and seeing where he can get. Before I sign off for tonight, I wanted to make sure I had a one-on-one conversation with Jalen Hyatt. And it was a good moment for Jalen Hyatt. And I have to go and check because I'm pretty sure Jalen Hyatt only had one catch tonight. And it was the one catch. It was the one catch for 21 yards. And I'll set the scene for you because I thought it was important. Giants were backed up in their own end zone. Still the first team. They showed a lot of confidence in the offensive line and in Russell Wilson to read the play, make the play. And they sent Jalen Hyatt. It was basically a go stop route. It was basically a stop route. He was running it as if it was a go, stopped 21 yards. Russell Wilson threw a dime, trusted him. Jalen Hyatt's been saying for 3 years he's got to earn the trust of the quarterback, earn the trust of the coaches. And last week, having to miss that preseason game, and I talked to him about it, he said it was very frustrating. He said not being able to practice against the Jets this week 2 days in a row was frustrating. But they gave him an opportunity to go out there tonight. And Hyatt said he had a little bit of a hip flexor, and that's what kept him on the field. So that's what kept him off the field. And he worked back from it, got out there tonight. No, you're not talking about Jalen Hyatt with 7 catches for 130 yards and 2 scores. But the game within the game for Dart, and then for Hyatt here is that Russell Wilson – Hyatt told me that Russell Wilson texts him every day trying to build his confidence. They worked together in San Diego. They flew him out. He flew Hyatt out separately to work out with him. He's trying to build up Jalen Hyatt's confidence. And Hyatt told me that he appreciates that from Russell Wilson. And he knows that Russell Wilson trusts him. So the big thing is to stay healthy. And Hyatt wants to show that he can be a valuable member of this offense. And I said earlier today, the reality is that he's got to prove that he can be that guy, because him being on the game day roster, just standing on the sideline with that speed on the sideline and not on the field producing, it's a wasted spot. And I think Jalen knows it, and I think the Giants know it. So they've got to figure out a way to find production from Jalen Hyatt, even if it's that one play for 21 yards, the way they hit it. And so feel good about Jalen Hyatt actually being back on the field. He's got to move forward here. They've got to be able to put the pass behind them. And I think this stop and go as far as the injuries and everything else, he's got to be able to stay on the field and prove that he can be trusted. And I think that's a big part of this for the Giants. Last thing I would say is the defense. First team, still very good. No Dexter Lawrence. So I think this Jets running game is going to be very good. So when you start talking about the Giants' run defense, keep that in mind too. The Jets are going to be very good running the football. Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, and Justin Fields also running the football, even though he didn't do that much tonight. But there was at one point, it was Abdul Carter and Kayvon Thibodeau, who basically would have sandwiched Adrian Martinez, the backup quarterback for the Jets. Carter bouncing back and forth. He lined up inside, lined up. There were several plays in a row on one of the drives where he lined up as an off-ball linebacker. He was really kind of an outside linebacker. They were in a 4-3 setup. So, again, more to like about Abdul Carter. Took that pop, got the chip from the tight end, and I think it was Stone Smart who popped him. And it was kind of a welcome to the NFL moment for Abdul Carter. And Abdul just kind of shrugged it off after the game. He's like, I'm just glad we got the win, But I'm sure Abdul will carry that with him and say that's never going to happen again, letting somebody get the best of me and not seeing that chip coming. So he's got to anticipate that a little bit more. You don't want to take a shot like that. So that's where we're at. Gave you 35 minutes after, a good night for the Giants as well. No significant injuries, according to Brian Daboll, after the game. So that's obviously a good thing. Giants have their meetings tomorrow. They're just Brian Daboll access. Then on Monday, We have Zoom access because they have a walkthrough. Tuesday we'll be in the building. Wednesday is the day before the game. And then Thursday night back here at MetLife, Patriots, Giants, preseason finale. And then all the focus goes to Jaden Daniels, the Washington Commanders, and week 1 down in Landover. Thanks for joining us tonight. Hope you read all of our coverage on NorthJersey.com. Keep following us on all those social channels. TikTok is just Art Stapleton straight across. Twitter and X and Instagram is Art_Stapleton. Thanks for Paul Wood. I'm Art Stapleton. We appreciate you being all in. Thanks for being here at MetLife. The final score tonight in the preseason, Giants 31, Jets 12. Giants are 2-0 in the preseason. Does it matter? No. But for a team that's lost as much as the Giants have lost over the past decade, you feel good about yourselves when you're walking out of here and you're winning rather than trying to explain away positives in a losing effort. So, big night for Jaxson Dart. He was all in, and we'll stay all in for you. We'll be back this week previewing the preseason finale. And it's going fast. Like I said, I've quoted Yogi Berra several times. It's getting late early. Giants are going to have a lot of decisions to make. Their young quarterback is making it fun to believe that this team is heading in the right direction. Have a good night from MetLife. We'll talk to you this week.